Okay, guys, now time for back to erotica and dominant situations and blogs and things of that nature. So I did a blog this week and hadn't done a blog in a while. I had a little blog going on, but I did a blog about being a woman in power. And I have been in the corporate world. I won't say I'll never go back to the corporate world, but I would do everything in my best ability to not go back into the corporate world. I've had several management positions in the corporate world where I was a woman who was surrounded by men and sometimes other women, and it's not fun. Because when you are a dominant person and when you are a woman in power, you are fighting tooth and nail every day with people who want to just see how far they can push you and then turn around and, I hate to use the word backstabbing, but try to force situations to make your life extremely difficult for the simple fact, and I believe this, I'm sorry, I believe this, you are a woman. I have watched men that were right there beside me, doing the exact same thing I was, acting in a whole lot more aggressive way to have fewer confrontational situations than I had. And I've noticed that with men in general. A true submissive man, when you're dealing with a situation where you have a woman that's a dominant and a male that's a submissive and the man wants to be a submissive, you generally don't have that many problems. But when you are dealing with an alpha male who does not have a lot of respect for women, and let me just put these in little quotation marks. I understand why a lot of men don't respect women. Get it. I completely get it. But it makes it really hard when you are a person who is honestly trying to be a negotiator, I am a dominant person and I can take control and I can absolutely be, I'm just going to use the word, I can be a fucking cunt. And to be honest with you, it don't bother me. I don't need people's approval. I don't want people's approval. Usually when you get somebody's approval, it comes with a whole lot of conditions on the backside, and I just don't give a shit about having those conditions. So, I don't really need it. I prefer to be a nice person. I think the world is a lot better place when we're nice to each other, when we use common courtesy, when we say please and thank you, and we show appreciation for things that are done for us. And things that are done for us give us brownie points, which I think doesn't happen a lot. I think people are real users. So being a woman in power is often very difficult because when you are a true dominant, you don't need to go above and beyond. Meaning, if I ask you to do something, I expect you to do it, then you're going to do it. And I don't expect to have to sit there and just hound people day in and day out. In the corporate world, that's what it ends up being. You always have, and it's not just men, there's a lot of problems with women too. And usually the problems actually start with the other women more than the men. If it's just a woman over men, that tends to go fairly okay. If it is a woman over women, no. It's going to be hard. It's going to be real hard. If it is a woman over a mixture of women and men, yeah, not pleasant situation to be in when you're in charge. I am a planner. I plan everything out. I lay everything out. I give instructions, and I just expect them to be followed. Like, I don't want to micromanage people. I don't want to have to go back and, did you do this? Did you take care of this? Blah, 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 blah. I don't want to do that. So in the corporate world, when you have people that are intentionally trying to sabotage whatever you're working on, and it can be the most asinine, simple thing ever, you wind up with a really, really bad situation. So that's kind of what my blog is about this week. You're more than willing to check it out. How does this deal with erotica? Well, for one thing, it's what got me into it. I don't want to be back in that situation again. And two, you kind of gotta understand that if you're writing some kind of corporate thing and you want it to have some semblance of reality or, something, then you gotta kind of have to take that into consideration. And, it is part of the real world, and it just can make life really hard for women. So if you work with a woman and she is your boss, please try to understand that it is a real thing. I'm not a real firm believer in the glass ceiling. I'm not a firm believer. Well, I do think women do make less money than men, but I also think that women try to do everything. They try to be mothers, they try to be wives, they try to be employees, and blah, 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 blah. And the men that make it into the big, the big bags, understand you cannot do everything. You have to make sacrifices. And those sacrifices dictate your life. And I think women, ultimately, the reason that they don't get a lot of the promotions and they don't get that pushed is because a corporation wants you to be completely loyal to it. That's what it wants. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that's what it wants. And if you're not willing or able to give beyond the expected, then it's going to choose the person that is willing and able. And a lot of times that means sacrificing their marriage, their relationships with their children, their health, their mental stability. Those are real sacrifices that come, good or bad. I don't necessarily blame a corporation for its issues. They are what they are, and we make our own choices in and around them. But having the knowledge and the understanding that if you choose to be that person, that woman in charge, you're going to have to make some very significant sacrifices. Is nice to know before we start pushing women that they need to go into executive and blah, blah, blah positions. We need to be able to make choices for ourselves. In the end, I made choices for myself, and I don't regret them. I don't regret them at all. It was pretty rough there for a while. When I did work corporate. Of course, I've been out of corporate for 11 years now. And I had to make a lot of sacrifices. Work got brought home. So I think I worked 11-hour shifts most of the time. 11 hours on the clock, not 11 hours at the facility. 11-hour shifts. I'd have to bring home big old manuals, try to learn above and beyond. My cell phone was expected to be on for, extended amount of time to like midnight every night, and expected to be back on at 8 o'clock in the morning. And they'd call and they'd text, and they had no remorse doing so. Be on vacation, they'll call, they'll text, and it was just expected. I have probably a lot more respect for men that are CEOs, or people that are CEOs in general, not just men, because I do understand the sacrifices they make. I was not a CEO, would not have wanted to be a CEO. I've seen that job, don't want it. But that's kind of where my blog was. It's a blog I've been wanting to do for a while. Just kind of, talk about it and talk about real women's issues. It does play into my erotica in a lot of ways. And it also plays into a lot of other discussions that you may have or may not have had with me over the years if we've talked in different capacities. So that's the erotica blog this week. I am going to try to get some work done on Susan Does. Let's see, what else do I have going on? Yeah, I'm gonna try to get the Big Apple route, which is where she's in New York. Also working on a little short story that will be on Patreon and probably on Amazon, I think. It's got Little Dick Loser. So it's gonna be a small penis humiliation story. And I'm gonna try to get the MP3 done for Susan Does Houston, but we'll see how that goes. And other than that, that's probably what I've got going on. So thank you for tuning in. I hope to have some really cool stuff coming out real soon. Mwah.